Hello, and welcome to the Telltale Cake. It has been a hot minute since we have recorded anything due to my general lack of pluck and gumption and executive function. However, we are back once again to discuss a book and eat some cake. With me today is my dear friend Caroline. And Caroline, how are you today?
Also, general lack of gumption, but I'm here.
Excellent. Hopefully this will be out just in time as a PSA for the holidays that you should not accept drinks from strangers that you have not seen poured, because you might get drugged and kidnapped and then be forced to question humanity's place in the cosmos. And no one wants that on New Year's Eve.
No, it's too much stress on New Year's Eve. And, well, we'll get to what else you shouldn't do when someone's offering you a drink, because there's a list of things.
Exactly. So what are we reading and why are we reading it?
So before I answer that question, I want to ask you a question. What is your complicated relationship with C.S. Lewis?
Well, I'm going to answer that, first of all, by putting on some lipstick, or rather lip gloss. Not that good old Clive Staples would understand the difference in cosmetics.
No, he would not. He'd probably just call them all lipsticks.
Justice for Susan, who was kicked out of Narnia for putting on lipstick, and I will die mad about this. So as a child, I read the entire Chronicles of Narnia several times, or had them read to me, whether one of the two. I loved them as a child. As I started getting older, I started having problems with them. Lucy was sort of my not like the other girls justification.
Yes.
I did not like the sexism.
Yeah.
Do like Turkish Delight, probably not going to betray my entire family for it. I really liked The Horse and His Boy until I learned about Orientalism, and now it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't remember as much about The Last Battle, except that, Susan deserved way better.
The Last Battle is, to me, the weakest one on multiple fronts, including the fact that at one point they use blackface.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So it's a weak one. I enjoyed Narnia books with the exception, interestingly, I didn't care for The Horse and His Boy, but I really liked the Dawn Treader and the Silver Chair, and I really liked Jill. But admittedly, she was also kind of a not like other girls girl. Admittedly, I was also kind of like that, unfortunately. So there's that.
It's hard to not be when you're into fantasy as a girl, to
Yes,
not buy the
exactly.
not like other girls.
Because the girls that are actually cool are all the ones who are not like other girls.
Right. And sometimes the ones who are like other girls get kicked out of Narnia for wearing lipstick.
Seriously. So
It's lipstick.
it's lipstick. Calm down. As an adult, I read some of his other works, and including the one that we're going to talk about today. And this is one that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a long time, since I read it. And it's one of those that, unlike Narnia, people don't know about as much. This is called Out of the Silent Planet, and it's actually the first of a trilogy that Lewis wrote. And apparently he had made a deal with Tolkien where Tolkien was going to do some time travel, and Tolkien didn't get to it because he was Tolkien and busy, creating the Silmarillion and doing a whole lot of world building.
You gotta write about the trees.
You got to write about the trees, and you got to write about all the complicated deities and all the complicated languages and everything. But C.S. Lewis was not a disciplined world builder, which we'll talk about, and so he just went full speed ahead. And of the three books, Out of the Silent Planet, to me, is by far the best one.
You mentioned it as a response to H.G. Wells, which I agree with. Well, he says pretty much.
He even says, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of references to H.G. Wells. It is very much War of the Worlds, but no, humanity is the only problem.
I had not actually read War of the Worlds. I'd just seen the older version movie. And so I did go ahead and read it, and it was pretty terrifying for an older book. So I can see how, especially the main character, would have read it, would have been terrified. and if you're not familiar with that War of the Worlds, the Martians come to the planet, specifically just outside of London, and wreak major havoc and have crazy world-destroying weapons, but they do end up dying out eventually. And it ends up being something similar to not having a resistance for world diseases, basically.
Smallpox for the win.
That's right. And interestingly to me, it was written before the Russo-Japanese War and before World War One, but he did include gas warfare because apparently that was already on people's minds. So that's cool.
Yeah. Also, as I recall, War of the Worlds, it kind of starts with like a prologue about how we can't really expect aliens to be peaceful because we're not apostles of peace.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So C.S. Lewis is like, but what if they were?
What if they were? And what if we were the problem? So, and I'll go ahead and just say, as far as the cake that I made, it got a little bit tipsy in the car. So even with my bad decorating skills, what little there was, you can't even tell it. But I have the sun. I at one point had planets. There is this is the solar system, which in Lewis's terminology would be the field of Arbol. Arbol being the sun. You have Mercury, you have Venus or Paralandra, you have the Earth or Tholcandra, and you have Mars or Malacandra. And I originally had some rather penis-looking, once I put them together, oyarsa, but they have decided to run completely off. So that was my very amateur version of the field of Arbol.
So what I'm hearing is that the sexual energy of the Oyarsa has bled throughout the field of Arbol.
It has spread its seed.
Oh, dear.
Correct.
Well, I'll eat some of it.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully in this case, the seed was made out of blue frosting, so we're okay.
We're good. I hope it's made with like all those dangerous additives that people hate. Wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And tastes like blue.
Yes, yes.
Which is just an excellent flavor. And tell me about the flavor of this cake.
The flavor of this cake is not symbolic at all. It's simply that King Arthur has a wonderful yellow cake box mix, which is actually kind of nice. And that was what I decided to do.
You know, sometimes making things from scratch is overrated.
I decided that it was because we're gearing up towards Christmas and I was busy. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be fine.
This is a perfectly good yellow cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you going to write home about it? No, but it's perfectly fine.
To be fair, I don't often write home.
I did add a little bit of nutmeg, but I could have added more now that I think about it.
Our ancestors rejoice at the wealth of spices in our cabinets.
Seriously, I have fresh nutmeg that I can grate. That is a wealth. Also, I have real vanilla. Insane.
So it's a luxury that our peasant ancestors would never have dreamed of. Be proud of us, peasant ancestors.
I think they are. I think they're proud of us for that. Maybe not for many other things, but for the wealth of our pantries.
I don't even have to churn butter.
It's amazing. There are people now who have decided they're going to churn butter. I think their ancestors are disappointed in them. I think that's bad ancestor worship.
Yes. I did make my own butter once, but I used a blender.
Mm-hmm.
It took about 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you churn butter?
If my great-grandmother had a blender, she would have used it.
Yeah. Nobody wants to churn butter.
No. If she'd had it at the grocery store available, she would have done that too.
All right, so bad ancestor worship. Don't churn your own butter.
Don't churn your own butter. Don't be a trad wife. Your ancestors are going to be so disappointed in you. They came so far for nothing.
I have a book of Icelandic spells, and there are incredibly labor-intensive methods for stealing milk from your neighbor's butter churns. And when I say labor-intensive, I feel like at some point you might as well just steal the cow or churn your own damn butter. Like, it would be...
In other words, these spells are so much work.
Yes. You have to, like, grow these weird creatures using your blood and feeding them consecrated wine for weeks.
Oh, my God. Who has the time? You got to be getting a lot of consecrated wine to feed this little mandrake or whatever it is that they have.
That requires so much going to church to steal consecrated wine.
I'm sure the assumption was they had to be there anyway. You might as well get some use out of it.
Okay, that's fair. Let's actually talk about C.S. Lewis.
We'll actually talk about C.S. Lewis. So the book opens up where a character who is a philologist, a language professor, is on holiday, and he's taking a walking holiday, which I have to admit does not sound appealing to me either. This was written in 1938, so set probably in the 30s. It's meant to be contemporary. And he's walking through around the Midlands of England, I would say. There's not a hotel or an inn where he had expected it, so he's having to go to the next town over. And when he gets there, he meets a woman who is missing her teenage boy. And he normally works for this gentleman.
Known as the professor.
Known as the professor. And he's supposed to be home by 6. He's not home, and she's worried.
Ransom kind of goes and decides to investigate. Also, he thinks maybe the professor will let him stay there for the night out of class solidarity?
I guess it would be some sort of class solidarity, yeah.
I cannot really imagine finding another person who does computer science and just be like, hey, can I stay with you tonight? That'd be weird.
To be fair, it's computer science. Why would you want that person in your home? No offense.
No, don't. If I show up at your house, don't let me in. I'm weird. So he goes to the house of the professor, and it's locked. He hears this weird scuffle, like, of people fighting. So he climbs the fence, gets in, finds 2 men. They are wrestling with this village kid. When Ransom sort of bursts in upon them, they stop and tell him the patently obvious lie that, oh, this kid's a half-wit. He gets violent. We have to just restrain him so he can calm down and go home.
Right. And the mom had said that he was slow, but they were obviously trying to tackle him and make him do something.
The book just refers to this kid as a half-wit without questioning this.
Right.
The rest of the time he's on screen.
Although I feel like we're meant to question it a bit because the kid is smarter about these 2 people than Ransom is.
That is a low bar, but yes.
The kid says basically, you weren't trying to do that. You were trying to make me go in there. I won't go in there. One of the men, his name is Featherstone, or Lord Divine. He decides that he's going to make this little story that he stumbled into Weston's laboratory once and that it was just got the wind up him for some reason. And the poor kid is like, it wasn't the laboratory. And Ransom should have taken note that things were not okay.
But he does not. He is fully, like, drinking the flavor aid here.
Yeah.
And he believes that these 2 men, Weston and Divine, they do have different attributes, but in my mind, they sort of merge into this Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type duo. He fully believes what they're saying, and he sort of insists that they put him up that night. They don't really want to, and they engage in a whispered conversation where he's like, oh, they're just discussing guest arrangements, so I shouldn't listen too closely.
Right, which, again, suspicious. They end up letting the kid go home.
Which is nice.
Which is good. Divine says, oh, my friend, he's just kind of basically a hard ass, although he doesn't say that. And he'll come around to you. Don't worry about him. And Divine takes Ransom into this area and decides to make him a drink because, you seem like you've had a long time. And Ransom tells him that he has been on this walking journey. And this is where I started to think, you're not a very smart person, Ransom. He says, oh, no, I didn't give any address. No one knows where I am. I have a sister in India. She doesn't expect me. The school doesn't expect me. I'm on holiday. He makes it very clear that no one is expecting him to show up or come back before the school term.
This is where I think the whole book would fall apart if the main character were a woman.
Yes.
Because I do travel alone. Sometimes I find it quite delightful. If I meet strange people, my husband has dinner waiting for me at home.
Exactly.
The fact that both the husband and the dinner are imaginary, beside the point.
Beside the point. No one has to know. What they need to know is that someone is waiting for you.
compounding the fact that Ransom does not make good decisions, he is offered a drink by his hosts, and they pick up a jar and go, oh, this is empty. Let me go into the cellar and get you something. So then they bring him a drink that he hasn't seen poured, and then they just kind of watch him drink it. And I'm sure both of us have gotten the lecture on strange drinks so frequently.
So frequently. Now, to be fair, we are, we're no longer young. We once were young women who were, going to college and all this kind of thing. So, of course, everyone was just pounding into your head. In fact, I was told many times that people would be offering me drugs. That never happened, personally.
I think we don't know rich enough people.
That could be it. Although I'd imagine the rich people probably aren't giving them out for free.
Most likely.
No. So I was always like, oh, yes, you cannot put your drink down. You have to watch your drink. You have to watch it be poured, all of this stuff. And apparently, Ransom, being a man in the 1930s, has never considered this.
It is so uncomfortable to me. Like, I could feel my shoulders creeping up. And obviously, he gets drugged. And
obviously.
And because this is, the scenario that we're all trying to expect, when he wakes up, he is, in fact, surrounded by naked men.
That's where the sexiness part of this book comes into play.
There's a surprising amount of nudity in this book.
There's way more nudity than you expect, given that it's C.S. Lewis. So he wakes up. There are the two men there, Weston and Devine, are both nude, but wearing kind of a belt with weights. And he's trying to figure out where he is, and he sees what he thinks is the moon, but much larger than the moon has any right to be. Then Weston informs him that it's the Earth, and he has a complete meltdown, which, honestly, I would too. I would also have a complete meltdown.
I do not want to wake up in space.
No, I know. That's not on my to-do list. Don't want to wake up in space. He tries to get Weston to tell him how he did this. Weston is this character who obviously is meant to be kind of okay, so these people were not even born at this time. But when I read about Weston, to me, he sounds kind of like the 2000s New Atheists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's who he seems like to me. Kind of like but maybe a bit more blunt and less loquacious. He's very cynical, but very smart, scientific, but has no patience for the humanities, or at one point he calls them the humanities classics and such trash. No patience for anything outside of the hard sciences. Thinks that it's all complete rubbish. And Weston's like, well, if it makes you happy to repeat words you don't understand. So Weston has designed a spaceship. They are in space. But the experience is not what Ransom would have expected. And here's where we get into Lewis and medieval times. So the Middle Ages had this idea of space more as the heavens, and obviously at certain points they still thought that the Earth was the center of the universe. So you have this idea of space as this very bright, colorful kind of place, full of life. And that's the view of space that Ransom sees through the windows in the spaceship.
He's absolutely fascinated by looking out the windows. He talks about the light constantly. He also gets naked. There's some hand-wavy explanation of, in like this lighter gravity of the spaceship, clothes don't work so well. They'll be uncomfortable.
Right. I think Lewis just wanted to get some men naked in a spaceship.
I'm not complaining. All I'm going to say is that his hand-wavy explanation of clothes in space would fit in well with George Lucas' odd conviction that people would be strangled by their own bras in space.
True. I think men do what they want to do when they're making these little fictions.
And they often involve removing clothes in space.
They often involve removing clothes in space. As I think you said, some of the understandable dislike and irritations that these characters have towards each other at this point, given that one of them's been drugged, might have been averted if, now that they're naked in space, we had just made this into a nice little, slash fic, a nice little 3M little fic piece.
I was kind of hoping for that when everyone was naked. I also read a certain amount of smut.
Sure. Sadly, this is Lewis in 1938, so we did not get that. I did forget to mention, so Divine apparently never liked Ransom to begin with. And vice versa. They had been at school together. And so there's a little bit of personal animosity there too, because it sounds like Divine was like, oh yeah, let's go ahead. We'll drug him and take him with us. Whereas Weston, and again, he's very much like these also kind of a little bit of tech bro in there too, where he's like, oh, we could have just taken the boy because he doesn't even consider him to be human, and thinks that in a better regulated country he would be given off to experimentation or something, which remember, this is written in 1938, so that's the kind of country he was thinking of. The two bad characters definitely, you can see from the very beginning, have different priorities. And Weston has this very, very twisted morality, but he does have a code of some sort. It's just very twisted. Whereas Divine is very much just out for himself and what will make him happy.
So Ransom is going to do a little bit of creeping and peeping around the spaceship and dropping some eaves. And he finds out that he is going to be given to the Sorns.
Yes. And he's been given to believe that the Sorns are creatures on this other planet where they are going.
Malacandra.
Right. He doesn't know anything much otherwise about it. He just knows that he's going to be given over to them. And here's where you see some of the comparisons with H.G. Wells, because it talks about all of the ideas that he has about what a Martian creature would be like, what an alien creature would be like. And I mean, Ransom hasn't even been able to see an alien movie yet, but he's obviously got a fully furnished imagination of these nasty, squelchy, insect-like creatures.
Fiction is here for him.
And as you can imagine, he's pretty terrified at this point. But he starts arming himself, which, come to think of it, how is it not obvious that he's armed?
Because he is naked.
Because he's naked. Wouldn't it be obvious that he's armed at this point?
One would think.
I just realized that's kind of
That's a good point. He starts hiding a kitchen knife on his person.
Right. Where is he hiding this kitchen knife exactly? Do we want to know where he's hiding the kitchen knife?
We do not want to know where he's hiding the kitchen knife.
It's a little distressing. We're gonna move past that. They finally end up on their journey in a very almost crashing kind of into the planet, which is Mars or Malacandra. And they end up getting out, and even though he's terrified for his life, he can't help but look around and be just a little bit in awe of the kind of the landscape that he's been seeing.
It's lighter gravity than Earth, and I like the way that Lewis imagines everything as being somewhat taller and skinnier, and that water doesn't do waves the same way as you'd expect on Earth.
Right, yeah, it's actually, I actually thought that was really well done. So you've got this vision of vegetation that's very slender and tall. And also the colors are not quite the same color schematic that we would expect on Earth. So they have blue water, but it's truly blue, not just looks blue. Sometimes, right. And because it's a colder climate, the water is warm, and that's where they get the warmth from, is from being close to the water. And then there's also these valleys and hills that he can see. But before he has time to really get invested in surveying the land, they see a Sorn.
And it is terrifying. It's long, skinny. It's just a weird looking thing. And Ransom decides that, before he gets sacrificed or whatever to the Sorn, he's just going to run with his knife. And also they put on clothes at this point.
He runs off, and after running for a very long time, he finally collapses, and he goes a little bit mad, just a little bit. Starts talking to himself, and as if there's a separate Ransom that he needs to call and find out something from. But in his defense, I would be completely off my rocker at this point. Yeah. I've been drugged. I've been put on a spaceship. Now I'm on another planet, and I'm having to be running off for my life. I'd be completely Looney Tunes.
But he meets a helpful indigenous person.
Yes. So now we get to the Haras, which are my favorite characters. I liked them a lot. In Lewis's world building here, there's what's called the Hno, or Hnu. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And those are any species or creature that is reasoning or not just intelligent, but reasoning, has speech, has a soul, one might say.
People.
On Earth, it's just humans. But Malacandra has 3 of these. The Sorns are one of these species, and he is now meeting the second one of these species, which is a Haras, which looks more, it kind of reminded me more of a Narnian talking animal.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of like the beavers, maybe, because he's got this kind of otter seal-looking creature, very tall, because they're all tall, but also obviously talking and using language. And I do like that it always frustrated me in some sci-fi where it's like everybody just naturally speaks English, but they don't do that. He, being a philologist, he can tell that the creature has language, and this just makes him ecstatic. The creature offers him an alcoholic drink because he's a good host.
As one does, yes.
As one does. And then the creature has a boat, and they get in the boat and start going to the creature's home once they both established that, yes, I'm also a person, I also have speech.
This is where Ransom will start having a series of very pointed introspective revelations about his own assumptions and what's actually happening. So he'll do things like be relieved that the boat is very much like an Earth boat, but then go, what else would a boat look like?
Right.
And he will, when he first meets the house, he is very kind of disturbed. If he thinks of it as a man, then it upsets him because it looks weird. But if he thinks of it as an animal, it calms him down a little bit.
Right. And also just the idea that he's seeing a Martian, but the Martian is actually a good creature and a friendly creature and not just like, rah, off with your head kind of thing.
He gets taken back to a camp,
village,
settlement full of Haras. And he goes from thinking of them as squelchy, tentacly things to thinking of the Martians as kind of backwards, in the language of a 1930s British dude, savages.
I mean, Lewis was very obsessed with the Greeks and Romans and classics. So there's a little bit of this. It kind of feels like the Odyssey, where it's this very adventurous, honor code, a little bit savage kind of people. They make poetry and they make weapons and they have boats, but they're not really the intellectuals.
They will respond to pretty much any question with, the Saroni would know that. And he assumes that the Saroni are their gods or their devils, and then just realize it's the plural of Sorns.
Right, exactly. And from that point on, he's really keen to understand what is the socioeconomic structure of this society, because he's still thinking in Earth terms, where there are certain societies that are the colonizers and the oppressors, and there are other countries, cultures that are the oppressed, or even different classes that are, the oppressors versus the oppressed. And he's trying to figure out, are these Haras that I'm with have I just stumbled into an oppressed society and I'm going to become oppressed now that I'm with them? Or is there some other configuration? And there's one scene that I really like where he tries asking them, well, of the different species, because there's one other one that we'll talk of later, which are the most intelligent, and are the Saroni more intelligent than Haras? And they get into an argument about it because they're like, well, they're hopeless in a boat and they can't do poetry and they can't do this, that, or the other. But they know things about the stars and the planets and the history of Malacandra and things like that. So they're more the intelligenta.
And then the other race can make things.
Right. So the other race is, I'm going to say Fifiltriki.
Sure.
I don't know if that's correct, but it's a strange word. And they are kind of the race that does all of the architecture, the making things, and they mine for their own things and then make them. And so at another point, Ransom's trying to understand, well, is someone making them mine this stuff? And he's told no, they just want to. It's around this time that he discovers that there is something that they call basically sun's blood that we would call gold that is all over the place on Malacandra. So now he understands why Divine is there. Divine just wants to steal the gold, probably enslave the inhabitants, go back to Earth and, have a great time.
Just Columbus it up.
Columbus it up is what Divine wants to do. Yeah.
Things sort of come to a head when they're out on a hunt. Because apparently the Haas have to go hunt these crocodile-like creatures occasionally. It's very epically poetic.
Yeah. Make sure they don't get too close to their settlement, that kind of thing.
So they're going out on boats to do glorious battle.
Right.
And this is also when we learn about the existence of the Eldil.
Yes.
Which are these invisible things that are sort of around, and they are in the service of Mal Eldil, who is like the greatest maker person, God.
God, basically. Strongly implied that Mal-Eldil or Mel-Eldil the Younger is actually Christ, and then there's one that they call the Old One, who's obviously God the Father, basically. Not sure where the Holy Spirit fits in there. That wasn't clear, but...
I think we're a little bit more obsessed with hierarchy than we are with being precisely theological here.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
But it is C.S. Lewis, so who knows?
The Eldil are kind of these angel-like creatures. They don't have bodies exactly, and they don't even really live in a particular planet. They live in the solar system or the field of Arbol, and they will sort of just drop down into the planets. And there's a class or a system of Eldil that's called the Oyarsa. I don't know if I said that correctly either, but who knows? And they actually rule each planet. So there's like an Oyarsa for Paralandra, and there's an Oyarsa for Malacandra.
However, our own Earth, Thulcandra, either they don't have an Oyarsa or it's stopped talking to the other Oyarsa. So we are the silent planet, the planet that doesn't talk to others, hence the title.
Hence the title, the silent planet. So they're on this big hunt, and they notice that there is an Eldil trying to speak to them. But right around this time, the great Hraka, I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced.
Hanakra? I think there's an N in there.
Yeah, there's an N somewhere in there. The Haras, their language, puts an H in front of everything. The great crocodile comes up, and Ransom ends up being the main one who slays the crocodile, which makes him feel really good. He feels like, okay, now I'm really part of the society.
And really manly.
And really manly, right. And he and Roy, who's his friend that he met, they're really all pals together, and it's really wonderful. And then Roy gets shot.
There's suddenly the sound of a rifle shot, which Ransom describes as the sound of civilization, which made me laugh.
Yeah. I think it's like a civilized sound or even a European sound.
And it's a gunshot.
Which, to be fair, if there's anything more European than taking a gun into a place that doesn't have guns and then shooting people, I don't know what it is.
True. So it is a European sound.
So it is a European sound. Roy is shot, and with his last words, he tells Ransom that he's a Harnaka slayer. And the other Haras says, we weren't listening to the Eldil, and you have to listen to the Eldil now, and you have to do what they said. What the Eldil had said, I meant to say, was that Ransom did not need to be there, and that he needed to make his way to visit the Sorn, which Ransom is not super pumped to hear.
He's still scared of the Sorn.
Right. And at this point, he considers them probably to be the superiors or the overlords of the planet, which has not made him feel better about the situation.
After all, it was his understanding that he was going to be sacrificed or something.
Right.
This race of beings wants him. And again, he's read a lot of H.G. Wells. And one of the things that H.G. Wells wrote was The Island of Dr. Moreau. So if I were him, I would be thinking I might be getting vivisected.
It even does mention vivisection somewhere in the novel. I remember that, yeah. So, yeah, he's definitely thinking along those lines.
No one needs to get vivisected.
No, terrible. So, but he decides to go ahead and do it. And so he goes and, he's given some directions on how to get there. And he starts on this journey, and it becomes very treacherous, pretty dangerous pretty quickly. Because he begins to go up in elevation. The atmosphere is very bad, and the oxygen level is very poor.
He definitely gets altitude sickness pretty fast.
Yeah. He's very sick when he is found by a Sorn named Ogre, is how I'm going to choose to pronounce that.
Absolutely.
And Ogre gives him something that's basically an oxygen receptacle, and is able to restore him back to health and carries him over to his own home.
And then he gets to hang out with Ogre for a while and have philosophical conversation with a Sorn. And this is where he sort of learns, okay, the Sorn aren't terrifying. They just wanted to, hang out with a human.
Right. The Sorn basically were just overcome with curiosity and wanted to hang out, wanted to talk philosophy. And it transpires they are the intelligentsia, but they don't rule over the other species, which that also kind of breaks Ransom's brain.
He wants to know who rules.
Right.
And the answer is always, Mal-El-Dil rules or Oyarsa rules, and then under Mal-El-Dil.
Right. And so he meets some other Sorn. They ask him about Earth and ask him questions about Earth. And he had not really given any of this information to the Hras. It says, among other things, he felt shy. And he does, however, talk about some of the horrors of Earth, such as the wars that we have. And the Sorn begin asking themselves, well, why is this? Why is it that Earth has all these problems?
And now, unfortunately, Lewis is just going to tell us the answer to this. It's because Earth doesn't have a good hierarchy. We don't have an Oyarsa. We don't, properly follow Mal-El-Dil. If we have Eldil, they're bent. Because in this Frost language, which is kind of the language, the lingua franca of the whole planet, there is no word for evil or corrupt. Things are just bent. If they're not good. They're just not working properly. They're bent.
Right. And so basically they say, oh, yeah, well, they all want to be their own little Oyarsa. And, it would have been a stronger book. You should know this, Lewis, from the grave.
Lewis.
Get with it, Lewis. If he had just kind of left it a little more ambiguous.
Yeah, let us worry about why we have all these wars. Why are we not peaceful when we only have the one race of people versus these three races of people that all get along?
Right.
Why do we not live in a non-want society? There's a word for this that I'm blanking on.
Well,
Post-scarcity.
Right, and they talk about that too because there's no one's going hungry. And they have this uncomfortable conversation with Ransom once, and I think it might have been with Ross, where they say, Ransom says, well, what if, no one wants to work or do whatever? And they were like, well, everyone kind of wants to, but of course they would, still have access to what they need. And Ransom says that, if someone doesn't in his world, they take away their food. And when it's put like that, it's pretty, it's stark.
It's pretty bad. I think they also have a conversation kind of about coal mining because the Fifiltriki, they make stuff and they mine the stuff they use to make.
Right.
And everyone's like, well, you want to make it, so you have to understand where it comes from. So people go down and they have that experience of mining, and then they have the experience of making this stuff. And Ransom talks a little bit about, the experience of miners on Earth who don't get to come up and make stuff. They just spend all their time in pretty horrible conditions.
Right.
I mean, this is 1938, so I don't know offhand when the battle in West Virginia, the Battle of Blair
Mountain. So it would have been before this. So, and I don't know what Lewis would have known about, but Lewis was probably thinking more about Wales.
Oh, yeah.
Because Wales very much had, and interestingly, there are some cultural similarities too between the Welsh and Appalachia. Wales very much has this, has coal mining in the late 1800s, early 1900s, even into the mid 20th century. And it's really devastating. I mean, it's the poverty becomes really severe, and it's incredibly devastating. It's very dangerous work. And the English, being the English, handle all of this like you can imagine.
Right.
And because they're the English, they don't even want them to speak Welsh. It's just real nasty.
I did not know that, but I am not surprised by any of it.
So yeah, so he's probably thinking about Wales.
So in this perfect society, however, there's no terrible coal mining practices.
Right.
There's none of this vicious capitalism where you work or you die.
Right. People do the work they want to do, basically. After he has these conversations with the Sorn, Ogre takes him to visit the Oyarsa. He takes him, it actually sounds very fun. He takes him on his shoulders like a grown man might, like a little kid, or like riding an elephant kind of situation, and takes him to visit the Oyarsa. And that's actually where he meets the Fifiltriki. And one of them actually does a sculpture of Ransom. And I thought that was also fun because Ransom at first can't tell what it is, and then he thinks it's really ugly and kind of short and stubby, and then he realizes that the Fifiltriki is trying to make it look as best he can because it's meant to be like a better image than what he's actually seeing of an Earth creature.
This place around where he's going to meet the Oyarsa, this is where a bunch of different people who are hanging out waiting to talk to the Oyarsa are. So, and there's an interesting point that I think Lewis makes, which is that there's a lot of laughter, and this is pretty much the first time he's heard laughter because the humor that shows up in this world is basically all jokes about the other species.
Right. And like how they're different from each other, or how they get along, but it's jokes about how different they are.
I thought that was a good point because humor is a very culturally specific thing, at least for us. Although it does seem like people falling down is pretty universally funny.
People falling down is pretty universal. I think that's true. Yeah.
As long as they're not old people that get hurt.
Right. No, if it's just some young person randomly falling down. Yeah.
Point and laugh.
Yeah, exactly. So he finally gets to have an audience with the Oyarsa, and he talks about his experience and how he was running from the Oyarsa because he was so afraid. And at this point, some of the Haras come and they are bearing there ended up being two people that were killed, two Haras that were killed by Weston. And they have Weston and Divine with them.
Now, Weston and Divine are going to think that this is a gathering of savages that they can overawe.
Right.
Like,
Right.
they do not see any of the Eldil. They don't see Oyarsa.
Mm-hmm.
So they can hear the voice of Oyarsa, but they think it's ventriloquism.
Right.
And specifically, they think it's from an old Ross who fell asleep and is ventriloquizing humorously. So they do a bunch of embarrassing things like offer cheap beads.
Yes. So at one point, Weston, and he even says to Vine, this is how you deal with savages. And he's got these beads and he's like, pretty, pretty, look how pretty. And trying to talk in this, you can tell he's learned a little bit of the language, but very little. And so he's talking in this broken Haras language, trying to get them to, to see how pretty this is after he berates them. And all of the creatures laugh at him because, it's just funny what he's doing, which he misinterprets and gets very scared by. Now, if you have read The Magician's Nephew, there is a scene where Uncle Andrew, one of the characters, is confused as a plant by some of the newly talking animals, and they try to plant him and then water him. There's a very similar scene here where the oyarsa says, go and dip him in cold water several times, and maybe that'll kind of wake him up a little bit. And as you were saying, it's kind of like C.S. Lewis thinks waterboarding is funny.
Yeah, it's really played for laughs, and it made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable. So he comes back at this point, obviously very angry. And the Yarsa decide to give Weston a chance to really say what he's after. And this is a fun part of the book because Ransom is trying to interpret what Weston is saying. Weston is just going ahead and saying it in English, and then Ransom giving it in the Haras speech. And because he's interpreting it, you can just tell how just blatantly greedy it is. But basically, Weston's idea is that once the humans have used up Earth, they need to just planet hop and go from planet to planet, starting with Mars, in order to fulfill their, one might say, destiny.
Almost manifest destiny
of just continuing on for the sake of the species. And he makes it out to be this wonderful, grand thing.
That's beyond morals.
Right, beyond morals. You can do anything you want to anybody else. He, of course, plans to enslave or kill all the Martians because they don't matter. What matters is that the people on Earth are able to, as Ransom puts it once, crawl about in some part of the universe for some centuries longer. And if this sounds familiar to you, it should, because this is basically what Elon Musk wants.
Yeah, it's very popular with tech bros, who seem weirdly terrified of death. They've gone from there's cryopreservation. There's this idea of transhumanism. People want to go to Mars or the other planets.
They want to take their son's blood. I still don't understand that one.
That's a weird one.
But yeah, part of their whole thing, and part of especially Elon Musk's thing, is they want to live forever. And they want now that we've used up Earth, we can't, we obviously shouldn't try to, save the planet or anything. What we should do instead is go to other planets and destroy them.
We're like locusts.
Yeah, truly like locusts. But Musk and his compatriots would say that that's a good thing somehow. So if you're reading this in the year of our Lord 2025, it's a little unnerving.
It really is. The more things change.
Now, I was reading some things. Weston apparently was very much modeled after Cecil Rhodes.
Oh.
Yeah.
That tracks completely.
Which tracks completely. And if you're not familiar, he was one of the biggest British colonizers in Africa.
Rhodesia was
Yep.
a place named after him. It is now sort of modern-day Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So that's who he was. That's who Lewis, and he basically said that at one point, that he was basing Weston a lot off of Cecil Rhodes.
That tracks so much.
Yeah. And Divine is just kind of, he doesn't have this idea of planet hopping. He just wants to get the gold and leave, have his nice little paradise. And here's where the Oyarsa thing seemed very creepy to me, because he was saying how if they were his own people, he would just unmake them, which was a little unnerving.
Yeah, apparently people don't get to just sort of die and rot in this world. They get unmade.
Right. And it's made out to be a good thing, and I can see how it could be if you don't have that many natural ways of dying, and then you just kind of leave with your own year or whatever. But it was a little unnerving to me.
Apparently there's groups of people that go off to be unmade together.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering what happens when they get unmade, because conservation of mass is real. There's sort of a recycling process that goes on with our bodies, because our bodies don't come magically out of nothing.
Right.
They use resources, and when we die, our resources should get reabsorbed.
I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say that Lewis was not the most scientific person.
Probably also not the most death positive.
Probably not well, to me, I think it's more about that he thought that there was this eternal life at the end of death.
True.
To me, the books kind of did go against this death negative thing, because it's definitely not seen as a good thing to just want to live forever and have your prodigy live forever on whatever planet you decide to colonize. That's how I read it, at least.
It is weirdly both optimistic and pessimistic, in my opinion.
How would you say that?
Well, it's very optimistic in that he's got this perfect society. I wouldn't want to live there because I'm a woman. We'll talk about that. But it's also very pessimistic, his view of humanity.
Right. And I think, and again, in the year of our Lord 2025, we can understand this also. So he was writing in 1938.
Yeah.
World War II hasn't happened yet, but it's real close. At this point...
But there's peace in our time.
Peace in our time. At this point, Britain's not at war, but it's only really because they've been giving Hitler whatever he wants. And so he's already taken over Czechoslovakia at this point, I believe.
Probably.
He hasn't gotten over to Poland. That won't be until 1939. But he's definitely on the move. He's definitely snapping up little bits of things as much as he can. He's already got Austria. And you can already kind of see the writing on the wall of what he wants to do. Granted, it's easier for us now to look back and see that. But just as one could look at things that Trump has said and say, oh, it's obvious what he wants, it was obvious what he wanted to.
Yeah.
So I think anyone who was relatively well educated and living in Europe in 1938 was probably going to be a bit pessimistic.
Yeah. And there is this whole, we could also read this planet hopping as a reaction against this expansionism from Hitler.
Right, exactly, yeah. Because it's obviously meant to be against the idea of colonizing in general, and which Britain is definitely the primo colonizer. But you could also read it as being against Hitler and trying to expand outwards and literally going for, quote, living space.
Yes. So. And, of course, Neville Chamberlain and his...
Neville.
So... Yeah, I think you're right, and that this is much more death positive. I think I have a reaction against this being unmade thing.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
It just seems a little bit...
It's a little weird, yeah. So it's decided that since the Oyarsa does not have authority over Weston and Divine, that they will repair the spaceship and send them back. And Ransom is given a choice. And honestly, if I'd been Ransom, I might have been like, you know what? I kind of like it here.
I can hang out.
Might just hang out, but he decides to go back. And so we do get them back in the spaceship. This time it's much more grim because for reasons that I do not understand, because I do not know much about space, the way that the planets are aligned, it's going to have to be a much more tight timeline in order to get there. And they have limited oxygen.
My assumption of what's happening is if we have, Earth is going around in a circle.
Right.
Mars is going around in a circle. So, and I don't know how true this is, but there could be a situation where they're further apart.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think they're having to travel further.
Right.
Because at this point, the two planets are further apart.
Right. I think that's accurate. So they're given enough oxygen to just make it, basically, if they don't talk.
And they have a hard 90-day time limit, after which the spaceship will be unmade.
Right. Because, understandably, nobody wants them coming back.
The Martians do not want them. They do not want to be colonized.
They have made it so that they will not be colonized. So they go back. They have a very difficult return voyage. And Weston and Devine apparently leave the spaceship with him still in it, I guess for him to just die. And thankfully he comes to and is able to leave.
There's part of the journey where they all seem to be giving up hope. So Ransom actually does a full-on Lovecraftian hero thing where he just goes to bed. And then,
that's right.
And then when he wakes up, the spaceship has magically landed safely somehow and the other two are gone.
Right.
Now, but yeah, as you said, fortunately it is in time to beat that 90-day time limit, but he does exit rather hastily. And I'd like to point out, if we remember from the first journey, they were all naked on the spaceship all the time.
They were.
So presumably they're all naked going back. And Ransom is exiting quite quickly. So in my head, he's still naked when he exits the spaceship. And this is going to be important because for humorous reasons, the first thing he does is stagger into a pub, because obviously there's a pub right there.
Obviously, and what's funny to me, and I guess just for the sake of the story, they don't just, I don't know, land in the Pacific Ocean or something. But I guess that's all been arranged. So he gets into a pub, immediately goes inside and orders a pint of bitters. And it does say that there was some surprise around him. So I choose to believe
he's fully naked.
Fully naked. Probably looking like hell. And fully naked. And that's why there is some surprise in the pub.
Now, my anxious brain was also wondering, how is he going to pay for this?
Oh, yeah.
Because he left his pack, back in the house he was kidnapped from. Hasn't used money in the last, however long his sojourn was. Is Buck naked?
Is Buck naked? What is he going to have to pay them?
I would be worried about this.
I would be worried about it too, but as we've established, Ransom is a very different person from you and me.
He makes different choices.
To be fair, he might have not thought any farther than I want to drink.
But that is what got him into the situation in the first place. So I think we can conclude with drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly. Do not let yourself be in a situation where people are going to drug you and then take you to Mars.
No, you are not that desperate for a drink.
No one's that desperate for a drink. And that's where the story ends, although Lewis can't help himself. He makes this little post note where he inserts himself into the story and has he and Ransom writing each other. And Ransom at first didn't tell anybody because he thought, well, maybe I just dreamed this whole thing up. And he was sick for a while, apparently, because the return journey had been so crazy. And then Lewis messages him and says that in this medieval work he's translating, there's something called the oyarsa, and asks Ransom about it. And at that point, Ransom, of course, runs and goes and tells him.
And that's how the book came to be about. And he discusses some things that maybe readers will have questioned, which I personally, none of it was stuff that I questioned.
No.
I have more questions about the nudity than anything
I
else.
have more questions about the nudity, but that's okay.
Speaking of, it's time to get into our unitless sugar scale.
Yes.
This first letter of which is sexiness.
Yes.
It is so sexy.
It's surprisingly sexy.
There's so much nudity.
There's lots of nudity, and there is some discussion of sex.
Yeah.
Which we didn't really get into, but there's a little bit around the when he's talking with the Haras about how they are naturally monogamous, and the Haras basically just have their few little offspring and then don't have sex again.
And but sex is better this way because it stands out as like this wonderful, perfect memory.
Right, exactly. And then because this is before the pill, although they had some birth control, he talks about how because of this, they don't have problems with overpopulation. So typical, Lewis being very sex negative. Yeah. But yeah, there was surprisingly some sexiness going on.
I have looked at several different cover picture images on this book. None of them featured 3 naked men together in a spaceship. Why not?
And some of them featured things that are not in the books at all.
You've got 3 men naked in a spaceship. Why is this not your pulpy cover image?
It should be.
I'd buy that.
Yeah, but no, that's never the pulpy cover image. It's very confusing.
I don't understand it. The U stands for uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say I'd probably rate it fairly highly for uniqueness, particularly for the time period, because you're imagining good things about the alien species, which typically is not a thing that we do.
No, and especially at that time period. Or now. Yeah, I mean, it's much more. I think we tend to exert our own prejudices, which is a prejudice against anyone different from ourselves and anyone who's considered out there.
And that is really heightened with aliens.
Right.
I really enjoyed the book 3 Body Problem, which is, of course, about aliens and an imminent invasion.
Interesting. Yeah, I have not read that. So, yeah, I would say it's unique because of that and because of little things because, we hadn't traveled in space at this point. He just kind of had to imagine. I liked that, like we were saying, that the water, the waves were different and the plants and the creatures were all much slimmer and taller to account for gravity and things like that I thought were interesting.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty unique. Mm-hmm. The G stands for gender. So let's count the number of female characters. We have the unnamed woman at the beginning that Ransom encounters who's looking for her lost kid. Mm-hmm. We have his best friend Ross's wife because, they do have a strict gender dichotomy and gender roles.
Right.
And then we have the feminized concept of life as a justification for colonialism.
There is also an elderly Haras who I think is a woman who teaches him the language.
Oh, I thought that was his best friend's wife, but maybe it's a different character.
It's a different character. It's an elderly character.
So there are 4.
There are 4.
All right.
That's it.
That's it. None of them talk to each other.
No.
I would like to go back to this point where this is like utopia. This is the perfect place, unlike Earth. But women still have very restrictive roles.
Right. And they even talk pretty blatantly about this, that the Sorns, who, let's remember, are the intelligentsia, are apparently the most misogynistic, which is quite a statement there, Lewis. And then that the Haras are a little bit better, and that the Fifiltrigi, which is the least human-like, actually have a bit of a matriarchy situation going on.
But the more intelligent you are, the less women have anything to do in your life.
Right,
basically.
Exactly, yeah. Or the less power they have. they're basically, it sounded like with the Sorns, they basically are just the baby makers.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know why these men who have this great imagination for what it's like in space or what a perfect post-scarcity society would look like still can't imagine a world without strict gender roles.
It's wild because you can imagine a world with no scarcity and no economic oppression and no war. You can imagine all of that, but you've still got to have the strict gender roles. It's crazy.
Yeah. I have feelings about that. And it's the same feelings that I've really always had about Lewis.
Yeah, no. And this is also, if you're familiar with Lewis's life story at all, this is very much in his pre-Joy Davidson period, which is his worst period as far as gender roles goes. He gets a little bit better once he actually gets married and surprise, surprise, is... around a woman who's a person all the time.
You mean once he talks to a woman?
Yeah, he talks to a woman, his female characters improve. It's crazy.
Shocking,
yeah. That's that point is where he writes what to me is his best work by far, especially as far as gender roles go, which is Till We Have Faces. But yeah, no, this is definitely the pre-Joy Davidson era.
It's not great. The A stands for axiness because Franz Kafka said that, a book should be an axe for the frozen sea inside us. And I actually saw an article about Franz Kafka in The Onion saying that Franz Kafka International Airport was named the most alienating airport. Which tracks.
That does track.
I did not find this book very axy because... he sets up this wonderful question, why can a perfect society exist while Earth is so bad? But then he gives us the answer, and I disagree with the answer.
Right. It would have been way more axy if he had not just provided an answer. And I realize then he wouldn't be Lewis, but
he is incapable.
Leave it ambiguous, and then it's much more axy.
Because I do... really disagree with the idea that a strict hierarchy is what makes a society good.
Right. I mean, if you have any familiarity at all with the Great Chain of Being.
Please talk about the Great Chain of Being.
That's what he's really referencing here. And it was a medieval idea that you have God at the top, and then you have the angels, and then you have the church or the priests, and then you have just men in general. Generally, sometimes they would get really specific with all of the different class structures. Underneath all the men, you have women, naturally.
Obviously on a different playing field.
And then you have, the non-reasoning animals, so non-human animals. Then you have plants, and then generally below that you have minerals or other earth, kinds of things.
So am I closer to a plant than to God? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. That would be correct. And Lewis is obviously playing with that a bit because you have in this society Maleldil at the top, that's God. Then you have the Eldil, that's the angels. Then you have the Hano, or the intelligent life forms. Now, he doesn't go so far as to say, oh, yes, all the women are at the bottom. But that's basically what he's saying. I mean, that's what he's saying in this utopia, that none of the societies have a gender equality.
Right.
And then below that, of course, you have other animals, etc. And the idea is that that humans and Earth are so messed up because we don't have this strict hierarchy where we're listening to the Eldil to tell us what we should be doing.
So basically Earth is our fault because we live independently?
Something like that. I mean, there is also, to be fair, he does talk about how that we're led by bent Eldil, so that would be demons, basically. So we have been led astray, one might say. But yeah, basically the idea is that, as one of the Sorns said, everyone wants to be their own oyarsa. So.
Well, I've been led astray by a demon who offered me a mortgage. So. And then I have to work to pay that.
Yeah, terrible.
It really is.
Terrible.
They want it paid every month. It's so unreasonable.
That is unreasonable. That is the sign of a bent earth.
Yes, that we have to pay rent every month.
Every month.
And
ridiculous.
It never goes down. It only goes up.
No, it only ever goes up. There are signs of it being a bent earth. I will say that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with his conclusion that it's a bent earth. I just disagree with his reasoning about why and what would fix it.
Exactly. Right.
Finally, we have the R stands for readability. Mm-hmm. It's very short. The characters, I like some of the Martians, but our hero protagonist, Ransom, is less of a person than he is an expounding conclusion.
Right. Like, Ransom is not, like, I liked the Martians. I liked the description of Mars, and, kind of getting into a little bit of the world building there. And I even liked the descriptions of Weston and Divine because we have known some of those people. But Ransom is not much of a character.
Have you seen Book of Mormon?
I have not.
Okay, so there's this running gag in the Book of Mormon whenever something happens that seems really particularly great or pointed. There's a little ting noise and a tiny spotlight lights up and points at our main character. So I feel like the experience of reading this is that little ting noise and spotlight every time Ransom has a conclusion wherein he realizes he's wrong about something that he thought.
Yes, that's valid. Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, these people aren't backwards. They understand spaceships. Ting! And fortunately, it is short because Lewis is such an unsubtle writer. It's easy for me to get annoyed, but it does not overstay its welcome.
It does not overstay its welcome. You'll note that I did not recommend that we read That Hideous Strength, which Tolkien called That Hideous Book. So,
Speaking of unsubtle.
I love Tolkien. Subtlety was not his thing. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes.
And on this silent, bent planet where we're defying the natural hierarchy. Thank you for making a cake that shows off the beauty of the celestial order. And please remember to drink responsibly this holiday season.
Responsibly. Do not let yourself get drugged and then carried off to Mars in a spaceship.
It's not a good plan. Just don't do it.
Don't
Stay
do it.
on Earth.